result in a bench warrant with no bond.
Leading us to ask the obvious question, what was he thinking? That does it for us tonight. Banfield starts now.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Wednesday. It's really good to have you here. Thank you for joining me. This was a huge... I honestly have no idea what Scott Peterson is doing right now in his prison cell. I don't know if he's, like, jumping for joy. I don't know if he's banging his head against the, cinder block wall. I don't know how he feels about what happened today. But I can tell you he looked a lot different when he joined the court via the telelink. Gone is the man bun. Now he's got a shaved head, and he listened intently as a judge made a decision, the most important decision in the last 20 years when it comes to Scott Peterson's case. And that decision was, no, you can't have it all, but you can have some of it. What do I mean by that? I mean, his lawyers had a partial victory today. They were allowed to test one itty-bitty piece of evidence, but they wanted a whole lot more evidence tested. They thought maybe it might lead to a brand new trial, maybe even freedom after 20 years locked up. But I don't know. Wait till you hear what the evidence is and whether it was tested before. I got Brian Enton on the case. He's going to be with me in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Also, I wanted to literally kill someone when I heard the story. And look, I'm a crime reporter. I hear horrible things every single day. And I don't know what it is about a little 1-month-old puppy or 1-year-old puppy. But when somebody hurts a puppy, I go crazy. I'm not going to lie. And that puppy, little Rocket, was thrown off a balcony, like a ledge in Manhattan, onto the concrete below. Terribly injured. That officer right there, that officer did everything, along with 2 other officers, to rescue that little puppy. And guess what? Were it not for what that officer and her 2 pals did, Rocket might not be with us today, but he is. And guess who else is with me? Those officers. You're going to hear from them. I'm going to tell you the whole story in just a moment. And then if you're a true crime fan, and again, I always say this, I think you are, because you're watching, you're probably a fan of The Silence of the Lambs. If you haven't seen The Silence of the Lambs, I think you should see it, because it's a classic horror movie, and it is probably one of the best ever. And there's a character named Buffalo Bill. He's a serial killer who throws girls into his basement, and there's a big, deep, well-like hole, and that's where he keeps them and throws lotion down to them to put on their skin because he wants their skin. It's disgusting, but it's incredible. It's a great movie. I always thought it was totally fictional. As it turns out, Buffalo Bill was modeled after a guy who kidnapped 6 women and kept them in his basement. That's him right there. I mean, it's kind of crazy, but Gary Heidnik, that's Buffalo Bill, the original. And there is a brand new People special coming out on his serial killing crimes, and they are crazy, including the hole in the basement where he kept the women. And guess who's joining me tonight? His lawyer. I'm going to talk all about his serial killing crimes, what he was like, the things he said, whether he had any remorse before he went to execution. All that coming just ahead. Let's start here, though. I wouldn't dare even try to get into Scott Peterson's head, but I think he's probably got to be disappointed. I think that's how he feels tonight, because this could have been the best day he's had since that California jury found him guilty, and that's almost 20 years ago. Guilty of murdering his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor. This was the day that his new team of lawyers, again, from the LA Innocence Project, so, kind of a big deal. It's the day that they marched into court and they asked the judge to order DNA tests on a range of evidence that was either overlooked or disregarded or never before even tested. Let me give you the list. It includes 11 different items found near Lacey and Connor's bodies in the San Francisco Bay. Also, 2 items from a burglary that happened across the street from the Petersons' home right around the same time as the murder. And 4 items from an orange van that was torched and then parked around the same time, parked less than a mile from the couple's home. Inside that van, blood-stained mattress. The prosecutors pushed back on all of these requests, of course, and they cited that the other evidence that convicted Peterson, and there was a lot, was plenty, and also that, the new DNA tests, they say, are just unnecessary. That's what the prosecutor said. And then the judge, what did the judge do? The judge agreed to order new tests, but only on one piece of evidence. The defense had theorized that burglars, not Scott Peterson, had abducted and murdered Lacey and her unborn son. But the judge said that nothing connected the burglary or the burned out van to being retested. And that judge is only allowing Peterson's team to retest the duct tape that was found on Lacey's pants. And let me just describe that. The pants that were on Lacey's remains after months underwater, after they surfaced and washed up on the shore. That duct tape. I should tell you, it was already tested, but it was tested 20 years ago, back in 2004. And it was found to have traces of DNA, but back then we weren't so good at this game, so it wasn't enough DNA to determine an actual profile. The judge says with the new DNA testing methods, okay, all right, well, now you're talking. Maybe you will get a hit. NewsNation senior national correspondent Brian Enton was in that courtroom today. He joins me live now with all the details. I have to be honest, I'm really surprised. I really am surprised that the mattress is not going to be tested. I sort of thought that was the strongest evidence from, the outsider's point of view. But this is really, I guess, a partial win. But there's a heck of a lot riding on this little piece of tape, isn't there?
Yeah, this is a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. It was interesting being in court, Ashleigh, because as the judge went down the list of all the items and whether or not they would be retested, it was no, over and over again. And you could see Scott Peterson just sort of sitting there, looking straight ahead, emotionless. And then at the very end, she said yes. She said yes to that piece of duct tape. The piece of duct tape that was with Lacey's remains when the pants washed ashore in 2004. And she said she believed that technology has come a long way since 2004, and there was biological evidence on that piece of duct tape back then, and she thought there was enough there to substantiate retesting it today at a new laboratory. So that was the one victory for Scott Peterson. Then they went back and forth. They argued about which lab they were going to use. The Innocence Project wants to use the lab they have a relationship with. The prosecution wasn't happy about that. So that fight continues, but they did get that one victory, Ashleigh.
See, I never quite understand that, because the Innocence Project is not about getting guilty people free. It's not. They literally vet every case. There are so many cases that want the Innocence Project to take on their mission, and the Innocence Project only takes cases they truly believe has somebody wrongly locked up. So I'm surprised there's even a fight over the lab, but okay. So then what about a timeline? Not suggesting in court today they would have even talked about it, but are we going to get that test soon? Is there, another 6 months till we get another hearing, or what's the timeline?
Well, and back to the Innocence Project, the interesting thing about this is not like the national Innocence Project that we've all heard of. It's like a small chapter of it in LA with 6 or 7 lawyers, and that's been made clear, because what you just said, a lot of people have been thinking, wait a minute, I thought the Innocence Project just took on cases where the people really might be innocent. It's a little bit different. In terms of a timeline, they're going to meet again in July. They were calling lab. They actually took a break today so that they could, the lawyers could call labs and try to figure out timing and sort of next steps. And they're going to meet again in July and sort of go from there.
Okay, let's talk about that bloody mattress, because honestly, that's the one thing that I've sort of hung all my fascination on, right? That there's a bloody mattress in a van that's burned out and discovered not far from, Lacey's home, right around the same time as the disappearance of Lacey. And there's people who've talked about seeing a van that's sort of cream colored or orange colored. I'm so surprised. Any idea why the judge said it's just not connected and therefore no?
Yeah, so she didn't say that. I was interested in the bloody mattress and also the hammer, the hammer that was found in the house nearby that was burglarized. And what she said was that they don't have either of those pieces of evidence anymore. They're not in police custody. They weren't kept, so they can't be tested, which I thought was kind of interesting. They also made mention that the blood on the mattress was tested before. It came back and linked to a male's DNA, but when they retested it, it was inconclusive, which is one reason that the defense wanted to test it again. But that's apparently just not a possibility now because they don't know where the mattress is and they don't know where the hammer is.
That's nuts. I mean, we've been making so much hay of this damn mattress, and now you're saying it doesn't exist anymore. But does it do any samples or cuttings or anything that typically they will keep some piece of evidence, you know, the clippings, that none of that, everything's gone?
Yeah, and I was also surprised that it got this far, that the defense made such a big deal of this mattress, that it was in so many of the filings, and that it didn't come out until just today. That they don't have it, that it's no longer in police custody. So the judge said that wasn't an option. Some of the other pieces of evidence, though, she said just weren't relevant. There were other things that washed ashore, a tarp. There was a piece of twine. There was other pieces of duct tape. And the judge said, look, you know, we don't need to test everything here. This isn't like a wild goose chase. That stuff just isn't relevant, so that won't be tested.
Well, I feel totally different because I'm a crime reporter. So I'm like, no, I want to get, definitive final results on everything, especially in 2024. So, okay, I don't know if maybe my eyes are failing, but when I looked at the video link today, Scott Peterson looked very different. I thought his head was shaven from the last time I saw him with the man bun, but now maybe it's even, I'm not sure, maybe it was just pulled back even tighter. Did you get a better look?
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because Juliet, my producer, and I were talking like, is it just pulled back so tight? But he turned his head a couple of times. It's like buzzed now. And there was the weird ponytail man bun last time. And now it's more of like a buzz cut. So he definitely got a haircut since last time. And I was watching him through the entire day just to see if he ever showed any emotion. There really wasn't much at all. He was in this room by himself, it appeared, at the prison. He wasn't here in the courthouse. He definitely was paying attention. But it's not like he smiled or showed any kind of reaction when the judge said that they were going to retest that one piece of duct tape.
These pictures, just FYI for the audience, we just switched to the March pictures, and then these are the today pictures, and the camera is so crappy today. I mean, the camera was great before, and the camera is just crappy today. That's why we gave you the other image there. Brian, just real quickly, I've only got like 5 seconds, but I do want to know about these restrictions that were placed on you. The court made you do something really weird with tape on your lens. What happened?
Yeah, I'm curious if you've covered way more court trials than me. I've never had this done before. They had the pool camera inside, and you were allowed to bring in your phone, which was a relief because I could tweet and I could take my notes. But they actually put this blue painter's tape. They have you put it on your phone to cover the camera. So everybody had to cover their camera, and then you were able to keep your phone inside. And I guess that was just a way that they could keep track of people and make sure that they weren't going to be shooting any video on their own. But I'd never seen that before.
I've never had that happen, and I think the weirdest thing that happened to me in a courtroom was the judge singled me out and told me to stop chewing gum. I was in my 20s. It never happened again. Brian Entin, thank you. Appreciate all your hard work out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Ash. Thank you.
All right, I want to bring in Brian Spatulski now. He is a former investigator with the Modesto, California Fire Department, the one that originally tested the mattress in the burned-out van and discovered the blood. So, listen. What was your reaction hearing that the judge has said, nope, we're not going to test that mattress because it just doesn't exist anymore?
Well, two things. One, I'm a little disappointed. I thought, like you, this would at least give us an answer. Two, I think there needs to be some clarification on what needs to be tested, because we've known since 2003 that the mattress itself has been gone. It's been disposed of. It's not the mattress that we're interested in. It's the fabric that was on the mattress that we're looking at right there. So, yeah, we know the mattress is gone. We know that that fabric was in police custody, and it was tested as recently, I think, 2019. So I'm a little perplexed at the answers, and I'm restraining myself because I don't have enough information and I don't want to give an emotional response. So I'm just a little confused as to the findings at right now.
Same here. And that's exactly why I said, what about the cuttings? I mean, I know they don't keep cars and mattresses in evidence lockups, or we'd never have enough space, but they sure do keep, the residual product, like either the test vials or the clippings or the swatches. And that's fully what I expected they still had. But it seems to me like that's what they're missing, which would be a damn shame. I guess I'm curious about the discrepancy as well, because I think you tested the mattress and got a positive result for blood, and then the prosecutors said there was no blood. What is with that discrepancy, do you think?
So my first test, the day I dug the van out over at Modesto Police Department, I put it in the luminol, and it tested presumptive positive. It turned blue. I believe you guys have that photograph. Then we took it to DOJ. We took a completely different cut of the sample to the Department of Justice up in Ripon, California, and that's the one that came back negative. So, you got 1 for and 1 against. I would think you would want to test it a third time and maybe a different piece and get, an answer on it. I mean, if there's any blood on there at all, anywhere on the sample, I think the entire sample should have been tested. But I'm not sure of what process, legal steps they had to go through to just get it tested a few years ago. But we do know that it was tested a few years ago. At least that's my understanding.
Super maddening. The van across the street from the burglary, there's been so many reports. It's tan, it's orange, it's light colored, etc. Was there ever any resolution to this van that you found, this orange burned out van? Did police ever figure out whose van it was, whether it was part of the burglary? Was there any sort of answer as to that massive piece of evidence right there on our screen?
Yes, we did know whose van it was. We went out and spoke to the registered owner of the van. I left the Modesto Police Department Modesto Fire Department in March of 2003. So I was no longer part of that process. I have no idea what was done. I do know the van and the mattress springs were disposed of because once the DOJ test came back as negative, it was understood that it wasn't an issue. It was, just another stolen van. For me, I rely on the scientific method to follow everything, to go through, and there's a process we have to do. And at the end of it, you have all these different theories that you're supposed to end up with one theory or one hypothesis, and then that's your answer. This would be a hypothesis I would think needed to be tested out all the way through to just say, look, we've looked at everything. You want to test it? Let's look at it. Let's make everybody happy. This is somebody's life. And it's not Scott per se. It's the system. We really need to understand this, and it shouldn't be something that's just lightly swept away. But, people like you looking at it is hopefully going to make it happen. I don't know.
You know what? I'm with you. Thank you so much, Brian Spitulski. I appreciate you taking the time tonight, and I feel like it's not over, so I'm going to be calling you again. Thanks for this.
You're very welcome.
All right, we'll talk again soon. And still to come, dramatic rescues, death-defying heroics. Those are nothing new for the NYPD. But the rescue of a 1-year-old puppy, mercilessly tossed from a high ledge in Manhattan. Now that is news, my friends. Tonight, as the case against the callous perpetrator moves forward, the young victim, that cute little miniature poodle in the front seat there, that's Rocket. Rocket, thank God, is on the mend, and the officers who rescued Rocket, who brought him to safety, they are live with me next. Do not miss these heroes. Just because you're named Rocket doesn't mean you can fly. And if you get flung off a high ledge, you might not survive, unless you are rescued by some quick-thinking, big-hearted animal lovers in the NYPD. And yes, I said animal lovers. Because the Rocket in this story is this little guy. It's a 1-year-old miniature poodle puppy who was flung off a high ledge in Manhattan to the concrete below. His rescue earlier this month has now been viewed by almost 6 million people on TikTok.
I snapped.
Just pass it to me.
Oh my God. Because no shade.
Kelsey, is that dog gonna live? You don't think the dog's gonna live?
He needs to go to the doctor. He's literally breathing, but he's choking.
Okay. Let's. Hey, we're gonna take the dog immediately to. We're gonna take the dog to get help.
It's your right. First.
We're gonna get there.
You want me to call them and give them a heads up?
Yeah, call them, please. Yeah. Tell them we have an emergency.
What's Kelsey doing? What's wrong with the dog?
She threw him. He's in shock. He's bleeding from the mouth. He's breathing, though. It's shallow, but he's breathing. He's not responding.
Call the elevator. Please.
Police had been called after Rocket's human, 26-year-old Cleopatra Morgan, was seen holding him after that terrible fall. Morgan admitted to throwing him off the ledge and now faces charges of aggravated cruelty to an animal, criminal possession of a weapon, and torture to an animal. Rocket suffered a fractured femur, traumatic brain injury, and also shock. But because of the heroic actions of Officer Kelsey Garcia, Lieutenant Vincent Caprino, and Officer Joseph O'Shea, Rocket is expected to make a full recovery. And look at these 3 heroes. They are live with me right now. First of all, huge dog lover, so thank you to all 3 of you for acting so quickly and caring so much for that little dog. I want to cry when I see that video. And Officer Garcia, I'm not going to lie, I saw the tears in your eyes. I could hear it in your voice. You were deeply affected by that rescue.
Yeah, I definitely was. It was hard not to. I own a dog myself. So, dogs are a part of your family. So, it's just not something that you do. So I'm really happy that he was able to make it through that.
Well, and, thank you to you for just being so attentive and caring and loving. Lieutenant Caprino, the reports are that the dog's owner admitted that she just snapped? Do you have any more insight into that call?
Not really. Once we heard the 911 call included a dog, I think all of us we all agreed that we had to get there pretty quick, and I think we all were hoping that it wasn't real, that you're hoping that it's either exaggerated or a prank, and it was kind of hard to see the dog in such a terrible state.
Yeah, I don't know how you guys do what you do in the best of days, let alone the worst of days, and let alone when it's just a helpless puppy, And we all seem to get pretty wound up when it's a puppy. Officer O'Shea, the teamwork was amazing on this. And I think the angels were smiling at you because I have been in traffic in Manhattan at that time of day, and it should have taken you 30 minutes to get to the vet, but it did not. How long did it take you, and tell me about that trip?
When I first punched into the GPS, I think it was saying 28 minutes. I think we made it there in about 12. So Lieutenant definitely was driving and making some headway with that. So it's a great job on his part.
Well, thank you again for caring this much and treating it as seriously as you did. And I'm going to thank you for Rocket as well. So the ASPCA sent a message, and Tamara Kurt wanted you to hear the update as well on Rocket's condition. I'm going to play the tape. Have a listen.
Hi, I'm Tamara. I'm an integrated care assistant here at the ASPCA, and I'm one of Rocket's caretakers. Rocket's a very sweet and friendly boy here, and he genuinely loves being around people. Even though he has gone through some severe injuries, he's an incredibly resilient boy. Thanks to the quick actions and thinking of the NYPD officers that were able to rescue him, he is expected to make a full recovery, and we cannot wait to find him a new loving home soon.
Man, I can see all 3 of you smiling. Officer Garcia, how does that message make you feel?
It's a sigh of relief, for sure. From the moment that we arrived and I saw his condition, it was on body camera when the lieutenant asked me if he was going to make it. I immediately said no. So to know that he's made it past the worst and he's on his way to recovery and hopefully gets adopted into a good home just makes it all worth it.
Lieutenant Caprino, have you ever had to do this kind of a rescue of a puppy before, anything like this?
No, not of a puppy, but yeah, it was definitely unique. Definitely the first time I've ever done something like that. But I think it was just the human element is you feel bad for for whether it's an animal, young children, elderly, and I think in that moment, even though it didn't look good, I just from Kelsey's reaction, I knew it was really bad, and even though when I first saw the dog, I wasn't really confident that he was going to make it, but I wanted to give my best effort to give him the best chance of maybe surviving, and just thank God he's going to be okay.
Officer O'Shea, why do you think it's caught on the way it has? I mean, I think over 6 million people now have viewed this on TikTok. It's just sort of, I hate to say it, but it's rocketed up, in viral views on TikTok. What do you ascribe to that?
I think it's the human moment. I think despite I know Kelsey, everyone always they say, oh, she had tears in her eyes, but I think despite the fact that she was upset that whole time, though she still had the composure to still relay what the defendant had told her, relay his condition at the time to Joe O'Shea, and just I think everybody, even though we might have felt angry and disgusted and horrified at what we saw. That's natural human reaction, and obviously Kelsey's reaction's very human. And despite all that, just the composure I think that they both showed, was great because if it wasn't for what they did, I don't think the dog makes it.
Now, any of the three of you can answer this. You can also add to it. But do you have any idea what's going on in terms of the defendant and the case? Just the whole notion that she made those admissions at the scene. Where do things stand now, or is this not in your purview at this point? It looks like none of you wants to answer it. So, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, it's still a little early. We know that the defendant was arraigned. We're still waiting to see what happens with the criminal case itself, but. I think the work that they did immediately. I'm pretty confident in the district attorney's office.
Yeah, a lot of times I have often worked on the show On Patrol Live, and I see police officers rescuing animals on the beat all the time, and a lot of times they end up adopting those animals. They just fall in love with them and they take them home. And I wondered if that has crossed your minds, you guys, because you're going to have to fight me for Rocket, and you're going to have to fight the producer I just spoke to through the microphone in my IFP as well. Just wanted to know if anybody at the NYPD has been talking about taking Rocket home.
So he is a hot commodity. So many people want to meet him. I myself am actually going to visit him tomorrow at the ASPCA. So I've been thinking about taking him home, but I can tell you there are countless others that want to take him home as well. So there's a long list.
Oh, Kelsey, if you get that puppy, I'm coming over, and I'm going to bring a care package. Thank you so much for everything that you three did. And Kelsey, please keep me posted on that. I'm going to check in with you tomorrow about your visit, and eventually we're actually going to get Rocket on the air as well. Right now, we can't do that because of his condition, but I'm just here to say, you guys did the NYPD strong. Can't say enough about the care and concern and the love that you gave that puppy dog, and I appreciate you coming on to tell us about it.
No problem at all. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks to the ASPCA, too. They did a phenomenal job.
Amen to that. I say that, too. You're right. And I'm actually going to give them a bit of a shout-out here, so permit me if you will. Folks, if you want to help any animals like this little sweetheart Rocket, and if you want to support the ASPCA's work rescuing and caring for animal victims of abuse, please visit the aspca.org/fight cruelty website. Again, aspca.org/fight fight cruelty. They have promised that as soon as Rocket is physically able to, he's going to be a guest of ours right here on Banfield. My great thanks to Officer Kelsey Garcia, Lieutenant Vincent Caprino, and Officer Joseph O'Shea for their heroics. They wear capes in my books. You know, there are very few of us who can say that they survived a serial killer, but you are about to hear from a woman who did. She survived his harrowing torture for 4 months, was even forced to cannibalize other women that he kidnapped and killed. Josefina's story and how it connects to the Silence of the Lambs. That's next.
Rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
Mister, my family will pay cash. Whatever ransom you're asking for, they'll pay it.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
If you're watching this show, I probably do not need to tell you where that clip came from. It's a 1991 classic, The Silence of the Lambs. The FBI hunts for a serial killer nicknamed Buffalo Bill. Wanted to make himself a woman's suit by skinning the victims that he kept in a hole in his basement. But here's something you might not know. Bill wasn't completely made up. The character was inspired, at least in part, by a real-life monster named Gary Heidnik. Back in 1986, Heidnik kidnapped 6 women and held them in his basement, where he raped, tortured, and even cannibalized them for 4 months. All the while, he was running a so-called church out of the same Philadelphia house and calling himself a bishop. Ultimately, one of his victims managed to get away and led police to the others. Heidnik was convicted of killing 2 of the women and given the death penalty, which was carried out relatively promptly in 1999. Now he's being featured in an upcoming episode of People Magazine Investigates, Surviving a Serial Killer. And joining me now to discuss Heidnik's shocking story is his former defense attorney, Charles Peruto. Thank you so much, Mr. Peruto, for being on the program. I am always fascinated by the mind of a serial killer, everything about what makes them tick and why they fly so far from the rest of us in the herd, right? Did you ever get a sense, I mean, you had a chance to really get to know the real Gary Heidnik. What was he like?
Well, I've spent over 100 hours with him, and I'm fascinated with this type of stuff as well, which is why I got involved. But he was the real deal. He was insane. Now, he was clinically insane, which is a far cry from legally insane. Legally insane, you can't know that what you're doing is wrong. Well, if you don't know it's wrong, then why are you hiding the body? Why are you burning the head, the dental records? Why are you dumping the body in New Jersey? But in clinical insanity is schizophrenia, which is what he suffered for. It was ran in his family. His brother was crazy. His father was crazy. And usually it runs in the family. He did so many crazy things, but he did so many sane things, like make his money grow in the stock market, calling his own shots, driving around in a brand new car, a Cadillac and a Rolls Royce. So the prosecution portrayed him as crazy like a fox, and I portrayed him as just batshit crazy.
Yeah, well, I'll say, given what he did, I mean, he forced the women to eat the remains of other victims that he killed. It was just so horrendous that let me play just a quick clip from the People Magazine special. And this is about how he was able to capture his victims. Take a look.
We went upstairs to his bedroom. We took our clothes off. You know, we had sex, and then when I got up to get dressed, he came up behind me and started choking me. And I remember I kept yelling and screaming. He was like, if you stop struggling, I'm not going to keep choking you. Just put your other hand behind your back. And I did, and he put the handcuffs on.
From the second floor, Gary pushes Josefina down another flight of stairs to the basement.
The basement has a mattress, along with this dirt hole in the floor. I said to myself, is this guy going to bury me here?
So that's what was so chilling to see, is that hole in the basement. It was just a quick flash at the end there, but that's the thing that inspired Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. But he really forced Josefina and the other sex workers that he captured and imprisoned down there and tortured. He forced her almost to do his bidding for him, and so that she could survive and even escape, she sort of had to take part in a lot of his horrors.
Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask Jacqueline Haskins, one of the victims, who I'm, believe it or not, very friendly with, she comes to visit me, bakes me things, and she was one of his victims, and I represented her, which is crazier than ever. But she says Josefina was in on it, that the punishments that Josefina doled out to her were real, and they were very painful. And Josefina's story is she had to make them look real and be painful in order to convince Gary that he had won her over, that she was brainwashed and now going to follow Gary. And I would have to have a tendency to believe that Josefina did what she needed to do to survive. She had to get out of that basement. She was there for months, and she just couldn't take it anymore. And she tried something new, and it worked.
Well, it's called People Magazine Investigates Surviving a Serial Killer. I can't wait to see the rest of it. Chuck Peruto, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up next, his wife stood by him every step of the way, even though they were both charged with multiple murders. And, blaming her could have saved his skin. But would the fifth love of Lori Vallow's life do the same for her? Hell no. Chad Daybell threw her under the bus faster than a gavel on a hot road in Idaho. But he didn't stop there. Wait until you hear what he claims she had in store for him next. That's next.
Deep within your tile's grout lines, Stanley Steamer's powerful custom-made equipment removes the dirt you see and the dirt you don't. Your tile and grout isn't clean until it's Stanley Steamer Clean.
It's your home cleaner.
Before tonight, Chad Daybell still had time. He had time for his lawyers, or maybe even the judge in his triple murder trial, to somehow move the needle his way. But not anymore, because now it is up to the jury. Closing arguments came and went earlier today, and deliberations are now officially underway, although we are told that the jury is retired for the evening. They'll pick up again tomorrow morning. The death penalty is very much on the table for Chad. He's charged with the murders of Chad's first wife, Tammy, and two of his second wife's kids, Tylee Ryan and J.J. Vallow. As you know, the second Mrs. Daybell, Lori Vallow, is serving life without parole for those very same murders. Live now to Boise, Idaho, where our Alex Capriello was in the courtroom all day. All is fair in love and war, Alex. I will give you that. But she stood by him. Lori Vallow stood by Chad. Chad threw Lori under the bus and gave a little extra pepper today. What was the extra pepper?
Yeah, in so many ways, Ashleigh. We knew going into this that during the closing arguments, the defense was probably going to do whatever they can to shift the blame away from Chad Daybell and towards Lori Vallow. But I heard a strange, far-flung theory coming out of defense attorney John Pryor's mouth, something that I had never heard before. And let me just quickly break it down. We know based on the evidence that Lori's brother, Alex Cox, had attempted to kill Tammy Daybell using an AR-15 style rifle, shooting towards her outside of her house to the point where she thought it was either a BB gun or a paintball gun. Turns out it was an actual rifle. Well, today we heard defense attorney John Pryor say that Tammy Daybell was never Alex Cox's target. In fact, the target that he was intending to shoot at was Chad Daybell himself, saying basically that Lori Vallow had hatched this plan with her brother to kill her fifth husband, Chad Daybell, of course, one of many. And also, we know other husbands of the past had also been killed by Alex Cox. But that was the very first time, Ashleigh, that I had ever actually heard that theory, and it was one that defense attorney John Pryor really was trying to send home with much enthusiasm.
That he was going to be next at the hands of Lori Vallow. That's a new one I wasn't expecting. So the last word in a trial is often the most important. Some say it's the openings, others say it's the closings. But how did both sides do, basically?
Yeah, the prosecution took about 2.5 hours to lay out their closing arguments, and they did it in a really smart fashion, in my opinion, laying out the entire timeline of events. It's so important for them to do something like that because this is a very long trial, almost 2 months long, and so those little details that are so important that you heard weeks ago get lost on the jury. So prosecution really taking a lot of time to lay it all out, everything that they heard over evidence and testimony and witness statements, and making sure it really sank in with the jury. As for the defense, John Pryor trier, really trying to make sure the jury felt as if there wasn't any hard evidence that really connects Chad Daybell to the crime scene. Here's a little bit about both sides.
Joshua Jackson Vallow and Tylee Ryan were found buried in the defendant's backyard. Tammy Daybell was found dead in their marital bed. And for what? Money, power, and sex.
It can't be an agreement that we talk about religion unless there's an extra step. And that extra step has to be, we are going to kill these children. We are going to agree to kill Tammy Daybell. And at no time did the prosecuting attorney show you a text message that said, let's kill the kids, let's kill Tammy.
Alex Capriello, thank you for being out there and getting those arguments for us. And by the way, you're going to be back on tomorrow because I cannot wait to hear what this jury has to say. Thank you.
We'll see you then.
All righty. Okay. Quick update as well on a story that we've been following. Closing arguments also took place today in the murder trial of Christopher Gregor. And you might know him better as the dad who was seen on video forcing his 6-year-old son Corey to run on a speeding treadmill even after he kept falling off. Corey died a few days after this video was shot. The county medical examiner called it blunt force trauma. Today in Toms River, New Jersey, Gregor's attorney insisted to the jury that the little boy died of natural causes, something he referred to as sudden unexplained death in children syndrome. Gregor chose not to take the stand and earlier said no to a 30-year plea deal. The judge is going to give the jury instructions tomorrow morning, and then you know what happens next. Deliberations. Still to come, one of the most mysterious and heart-rending murders in American history. No one has ever been charged in the killing of JonBenet Ramsey, but there have been suspects, one of whom recently got out of prison for child pornography and was obsessed with JonBenet. That story's next. Almost 30 years since JonBenet Ramsey was murdered, and over the years, at least 2 suspects have not only emerged, but they confessed, only to be ruled out when their DNA failed to match that from the crime scene. One of those men is Gary Oliva, who was recently released from a Colorado prison after serving 8 of a 10-year sentence for child porn. He confessed to killing JonBenet by accident in letters to a friend. He reportedly had hundreds of photos of her on his phone, but the testing did not prove him to be the killer. And still today, it's the DNA testing that's keeping hope alive for JonBenet's dad, John Ramsey, who will be my guest for a special edition of Banfield at CrimeCon. So we hope you will join us. We're going to talk a lot about the cold case review team as well. That's it for tonight. Almost next.
How you doing? How you doing? I'm Chris Cuomo, and I welcome you here to Get After It. We've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the show tonight. He's going after CNN, saying they are wrongly excluding him from their debate. Is he right? How does he feel being targeted by both sides? And I have a couple of questions.